He hasn't played the game. He doesn't know anything about football. You have an element of appearance too. You know, what do people think about you as a referee based on your appearance?
Welcome to an extraordinary journey through the lens of Jamie Robinson, a name synonymous in the world of football refereeing.
I can remember reading something last year where somebody tweeted saying, I hope Jamie Robinson dies a painful death in a ditch.
An innovative entrepreneur at the cutting edge of business.
And I got a real taste for everything in the business: marketing, operations, finance.
You are listening to the Pecha Kucha podcast. Well, Jamie, welcome to the Pecha Kucha podcast. We start every podcast with exactly the same question, and that is, what does success mean for Jamie Robinson?
Thanks very much for having me. First of all, it's great to be on here. Really loving what you're doing at the minute, and hopefully a lot of success in this podcast as well. So success for me, difficult first question really. I guess it's different for everyone in terms of what success is. Some people look at it in different ways. Some people look at it like financial, relationships. There's so many angles to look at for it. I guess it's really just moving forward every day. It's making small improvements, and I know we spoke about this before starting the podcast. It's me looking at my day at the end of the day and realizing that I've came a little bit further forward than I was at the start of the day. And I know that's kind of cliche, but sometimes we get caught into thinking that we haven't done enough because we've got such a list of things to do, but in reality, we're further than we were the previous day. So success to me is just moving a little bit closer to my goals than I was before, and ultimately I'll get there in the end. So I think sometimes we're guilty of looking at things in such a big way that they're overwhelming, but what we should do is just break it down, and I think anyone can achieve success that way.
Yeah. It's those incremental, isn't it, improvements in terms of sort of those tiny little stepping stones. Always talk about the big picture and the little picture.
Absolutely.
If our big picture is the goal, how many little pictures is that made up of? And how do we pick those off one at a time? Yeah. With yourself, you obviously have your refereeing career, but I also know you're an entrepreneur, local businessman as well. So I want to take a bit of a two-pronged approach to this, cover a bit of everything, I think, in terms of looking at the mindset and psychology around both those roles that you undertake. But the first thing for me, I'm doing a bit of research on you. The 14-year-old boy that becomes a football referee. Obviously, in my mind, most 14-year-olds dream of the number 7 jersey for their country. What was the mindset? Where did that come from? Like, what was the aspiration to become a referee? And was there anything? Was there a grandfather? Was there what was it that inspired you to that route, I suppose?
It's slightly strange, Jason. It's a weird story because I initially was never that interested in football at a young age. So it's kind of funny to look back on how I've become so involved in it now. But started playing football probably because people around me were playing football. It seemed like a normal thing to do as a 12, 13, 14-year-old boy. What else does a boy that age do? Everyone else is doing it. It seems to be the thing to do. So yeah, I started doing that. And I've said this many times, I was playing on a team that just weren't very good. And maybe it's down to me because I was the goalkeeper in that team, but I lost the love of playing at a very early age because of that. But I could have very easily have moved team and stayed in football, playing football, but I didn't. I decided, right, that's enough for me. So the next thing was, right, I do like the sport, but I lost the love of playing, so how do I stay involved? And I thought about coaching. I thought about just going to watch games as a fan. And it was a relative of mine, my uncle. He suggested to go and do a referee course, and never really considered that as something to do. Only had negative things in my head about being a referee, so naturally it was, I'm not sure whether I should do something like that because nobody likes referees. Why would I put myself in that position? But once I guess, looked a bit more into it, researched it a bit more, I thought, right, there might be an opportunity here. If I start at this age, I could progress pretty quickly and perhaps get to a level beyond what I would playing. So I took a course with my uncle actually, so that helped that I was going to do it with somebody over an 8-week period. And yeah, enjoyed it, enjoyed the element of learning the laws of the game, finding out a different side of football, totally different perspective, and went and refereed my first game, which was, I was incredibly nervous for, really nervous. And I think it was a boys brigade game, under 12s, on a back park pitch. I think it was maybe a friendly as well. So looking back, it's incredible that I was nervous for it. But, you know, I was in that position. So went from there, enjoyed it, even though I was nervous, and ended up doing a few games after that. So I've just stayed in it since. I'm 16 years down the line now, which is incredible. I've refereed longer in my life than I haven't. So it's incredible to think about, but it's a different path, and I kind of fell into it by chance a little bit, and yeah, it's incredible. You know, I'm so grateful that I did start it, and I've had so many great opportunities and life experiences.
It's a very interesting story because I think it's that thing, isn't it, that we can't all be good at sport. We can't be all, I suppose, follow our dreams of playing at whatever level we see as at the pinnacle of our opportunities. But it's nice to see that there's other options in sport. You know, I worked as a video and performance analyst, so I'm the guy behind the scenes sitting with a computer. We don't realise those opportunities exist, and we can still stay involved in something that we have a great passion for.
And that's it. We spoke about pretty previously before the podcast that you don't have to be good at playing a sport to actually be good in another role within that sport. Sometimes we're guilty of thinking about that. You look at the coaches, the managers in the professional game that have maybe played the sport but not to a high level. People are still judging them for that because of that. But in reality, it's a completely different, isolated role that people can train and become good at. And yeah, it's the same with refereeing, you know.
Steve Jobs didn't make the iPhone.
You know what I mean? It's
put the jigsaw pieces in place for that to happen.
Exactly.
But he didn't physically make the iPhone. You know what I mean? So that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can contribute to anything at such a high level. It's just putting those jigsaw pieces together in the right order.
Yeah.
Obviously, from a refereeing perspective, then we've got a bit of a background there. But you also a local businessman. You acquired a business, is that right? AH International and Touchline. Thinking of that, from me having been involved in business, I want to understand, how do you go about acquiring a business rather than just maybe starting? What was the thinking there? What was the purpose of the acquisition rather than just going out and starting a new business from afresh?
Well, to take it back, I've always been interested in business. I knew I would end up having my own business at some stage in my life. I knew this from a very early age. My parents used to take me to a caravan site when I was quite young, and so I met a lot of my friends. But at that stage, I was constantly thinking about how to make money. That's all I was interested in. All my friends were playing football. They were going and having fun, doing whatever. And I was thinking, right, how can I make money? And I was maybe only 8 or 9, 10 at this stage, maybe even younger actually. So I was doing things there like I got a ride along go-kart and a trailer for one of my birthdays. So anyone else would just be using that for fun, getting from A to B. I was using it to go to people's caravan doors and knock on it and ask if they want their bins emptied for 50p. Ask them if they wanted their car washed. I could do both for a discount. You know, so I had everything in the trailer. I had sponges, fairy liquid, whatever it was. And yeah, that's where it really started. I was working for the caravan site owner at that stage as well. I was cleaning the toilets. So I can remember seeing my friends go past while I had a mop.
Yeah.
I was cleaning the toilets at 7 p.m. at night, and they were having great fun doing whatever they were doing. But that was more interesting to me at that stage.
Yeah.
I found more pleasure in doing that and getting paid to do that than just playing with my friends. Probably missed out in some things at that stage, but I knew that's what I was interested in. So that's going back. But yeah, I always knew I wanted to do something, and it was either going to go one of two ways. I didn't think it would go the second way that it did, but I start something and I pursue that and see how it goes, or I fall in with somebody and start a business that way, potentially. But so I acquired a business a couple of years ago. Sorry, not a couple of years ago, a year ago. And my mindset was, this is a successful business. So is it not a better option for me to look at acquiring a successful business rather than starting one, given the fact that 97% fail?
Yeah.
So it's not something really talked about much, and I know there's barriers to entry given the cost of acquisition, but if we can see a business that's performing really, really well over a number of years, the chances of it performing for the next number of years are quite high versus a startup. So that was the idea behind that, and luckily it worked out okay. I'm now working in it, and just trying to see how I can grow it, and who knows what'll come in the future. I'll always be involved. I think that now in something or other, whether it's this or something else in the future.
I love the story there about the cat, because I can always remember convincing my granny when I was growing up, Granny, my name's going to be up in lights, one day. I'm going to be a millionaire. And I've never made the millionaire status, but I've now got my name onto a TV screen through a podcast. So maybe I've covered just one tiny bit of that.
Yeah, it's funny. I think my granny said the same thing, but because she could see this is not a normal thing to be doing at 7 or 8 years of age. So yeah, it was quite unique in that sense.
Having obviously every podcast, I do a bit of research on who's coming onto the podcast, and I've read a few articles. And you worked for BPerfect for a while, did you?
Yeah, I worked there.
You seem to hold Brendan McDowell, another local entrepreneur, to quite high esteem.
Yeah.
You always seem to mention. Is there anything there from a point of view of any pointers that maybe helped you? Did anything lead into help you with your acquisition and things like that, in terms of taking a lead from obviously somebody that's very successful in the Northern Ireland economy? What's the relationship there, and how has that helped you going forward?
Yeah, so I messaged Brendan a few years ago and said to him, look, Brendan, I'm interested in business. I'd love to come in and work for BPerfect for a period of time. Would you be interested in taking me on? And he replied and said, yeah, come on down for an interview tomorrow. So I went down and we had a chat. I wouldn't say it was an interview, it was more of an informal chat. And he said, yeah, when can you start? So my idea there was, this is a really successful business in BPerfect. Brendan McDowell's an incredible entrepreneur. Why don't I put myself in that position to be around all of that and learn from that? Because I knew that I wanted to have my own business. So I knew I wasn't there yet, and I still need to learn a lot, but I was giving myself the best chance by putting myself in that environment. So I worked there for a couple of years, and I was able just to see how he operated, how he dealt with different situations, how he handled obstacles and overcame difficult problems in business, how he hired people, everything. And I got a real taste for everything in the business: marketing, operations, finance, all of it. And yeah, it was really, really useful, really, really helpful. I always said to him that I'll not be here forever. I'm here because I want to learn. I want to give my best effort to be perfect, and ultimately I'd love to have my own business someday. And he understood that, and he got that, because somebody else might have went, oh well, no, I want somebody here for the long term. If you're just using me to learn, then it's not of interest to me. So I said, that's great. I'm glad I can be here. I'm glad I can learn. And yeah, he's doing incredible things. He's a good friend of mine. We'll train quite often together. So that relationship sort of is still there, and he helped me with with the acquisition and different things, he's always at the end of a phone.
Do you not think that's a mark of a true entrepreneur and a leader in business, that they understand their people in so much that there's a point I can take you, but then if you're going on to better yourself in terms of owning your own business, then I would love to have some footprint on that, if you know what I mean. Like if somebody comes to me and says, Jason, can I mentor you? I've worked with young lads, you know, Terry, obviously our colleague, and Mark McAravey and stuff, I've shadowed for years and worked with, and it's that thing of saying, I'm not the pinnacle of your career, but I can contribute some value to it.
Yeah.
And hopefully take you forward. And obviously Brendan's done that for you in terms that he spotted that, and that's just, to me, that's a leader.
I agree, and more than likely he was probably in that position at some stage in his life and needed someone to give him that experience and believe in him, because he knew that he wanted to start something as well. Yeah. So yeah, completely. And he probably gets satisfaction from seeing me doing what I'm doing now. Yeah. I hope so anyway. And he can say to himself, well, I played a small part in his journey, and I give him an opportunity to come in and learn. So I'll always be grateful for that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So sort of, I want to now move to the whole concept of decision making. I'm thinking of you as a business leader, but then as a referee. And I read only this week about you sort of like outsourcing your order fulfillment with your business, and thinking of something like that. I'm sure that decision, that wasn't made overnight. That's something that you go through a process. There's maybe other people involved in that process, and I suppose you could correct me if I'm wrong in this. And then comparing that to a Saturday afternoon where, you know, because that's a big decision in terms of your order fulfillment in a business. Then on a Saturday afternoon, you have massive decisions. You don't have that time afforded to you in terms of, how do I get this right? How does that sort of overlap, I suppose, and does the refereeing help with those sorts of decisions as well? And what does that look like on a Saturday afternoon where something happens and the instantaneous decision you have to make? What's the process going on there in obviously your head to get that right?
There's a lot of similar principles to refereeing and business, and I've touched on them a few times, because you've got that element of making decisions under pressure. Okay, you mightn't have the same pressure in business as refereeing because you've got more time to think about it, but it's the same idea. And there's so many different things. There's managing people. There's, as I said, making decisions under pressure. There's so many crossover things there between refereeing and business. And we talk in refereeing about making the right decision at the right time for the right reason. And it's quite similar to business, because a lot of the time you won't have full information on a given situation, but you're making a decision based on what you do have, and you have to work off that. Otherwise, if you're waiting for full information on anything, any decision in life or refereeing, you'll never get anywhere. You'll never make a decision, and you'll never move forward. So you have to work with what you have. And we talk in refereeing too about something called contextual decision making, which is basically the same principles as what I said before. The best decision isn't always the technically correct decision.
Yeah.
So what we mean by that is, you can have a referee that knows the laws of the game inside out and applies them completely correctly, but they're never going to be seen as the best referee versus the person that makes the best decision in terms of what people expect in a game. So that's where there's a really difficult balance to strike, especially for new referees, because they're thinking, I need to apply the laws of the game to this football match, but sometimes it's not black and white. Football's not black and white. It's so opinionated. And I think that's what probably makes good referees, is that they know what the best decision is at any point in time, which may not be technically correct. So linking back to what you said with regards to business, that's the same. It's the same principles. You're sometimes making a decision that's not the correct decision, but you're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah. And then obviously thinking of that refereeing concept, the amount of scrutiny a decision can come under. How do you deal with that? Because I'm even thinking of the world of the current, I suppose, mental health epidemic that we're facing as a society. And you think of, as you said at the start, putting yourself, who wants to be the referee as a 14-year-old, but putting yourself in that position, and you think of those decision making, but the scrutiny of your decisions, is it not unbearable sometimes in terms of what goes on, whether it be mainstream media, the media, but pundits, going for a pint after the game. I'm sure people have comments to make to you in social environments that maybe they shouldn't be. How do you deal with that pressure as a referee? And I suppose, what advice would you have to the next generation of referees trying to come through with that sort of concept as well?
It's mental toughness. It's the ability to maintain resilience and confidence under pressure.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing to look at, and I don't know what studies have been done on it, but mental toughness is a big thing for referees. And as you say, there's so much scrutiny in everything now, and that comes from the financial pressures on teams and the consequences of incorrect decision making on the teams financially. So, and that's a lot on anyone's shoulders. Yeah. So whenever you're in the middle of a pitch surrounded by thousands of people and you've a split second to make a decision that could be, really costly for one team, it's hard. And hard's probably an understatement, to be honest. I think you're always going out to the referee the best of your ability. Sometimes it doesn't work out. There's times that you make mistakes.
Yeah.
But you're always going out with a mindset of refereeing to your best ability, and you're trying to get everything right. And I think we do strive for perfection, but we understand, and I think with experience, we understand that it's not possible.
Yeah.
It's not possible in anything in life. But why do people expect referees to be perfect? And that's why you have the whole idea of everyone in every league in every country thinks that their referees are the worst referees in the world because they're comparing them to perfection, and it's not possible. So, yeah, go back to your point. It is challenging mentally, I think, to cope with mistakes, especially after a game. And you said about social media can be so toxic. It can be so toxic for most people, never mind what we might face from fans, from whoever else that make comments behind a computer screen. I can remember reading something last year where somebody had tweeted saying, I hope Jamie Robinson dies a painful death in a ditch, or something along those lines. And that was over a decision
on a football pitch.
So I have to ask, what's wrong with that person mentally that has led them to type that and put that on a public forum?
That goes to sort of where I was trying to take this conversation anyway, because I can remember the Peter Walton with Jermaine Jenis and Paul Scholes conversation on Sky a few years ago, and they were talking about influencing a referee, weren't they? They were saying, like, we do everything we can to get an advantage, and we would have tried to work the referee and said things and tried to manage that referee. So obviously that environment can be hostile for teams, let alone a referee. So they only have to deal with one opposition teams. You're dealing with both.
Yeah.
The hostility of both. And then obviously that aftermath, how does that affect the next game? How do you clear that in terms of it not, I suppose, getting in the way of making good decisions in the network, that it does have an influence, that you sort of lean, you know what I mean? Maybe I did make a mistake and you actually didn't, because, if people keep saying it, does it become the truth sometimes?
In terms of what?
Like if people are, you made the wrong decision with that penalty, and if you keep reading that all week, do you start to believe it? Like in your mind originally, I made the right decision. That's a penalty. But then all week you have media, you have social media. He's made the wrong decision. Does it affect you in a way that you go, maybe I was wrong with that?
It used to. It used to. I've got a lot better at self-reflection.
Yeah.
You have to. You have to. Otherwise, you'll just it'll consume you. It'll destroy you for however long. You have to accept mistakes, and I'm very good at looking back on a decision and realizing that was wrong. That was wrong, and that's okay. It might not be okay to the teams. They might not look at it like that, but I can accept myself that was wrong, and I move on. I park that. I move on to the next game, and that's the way you have to do it. Otherwise, you'll never get over it. You'll never get over it. I could be thinking about a decision I made 2 years ago in the next game, but I think once that first whistle blows in the next game, all your focus is on that. You're not worrying about anything else. You're worrying about team A, team B, and let's make the right decision.
What are the strategies then for trying to, like, I don't know whether you, I don't know if I'm going to use the right word here, like maintaining authority within a game. So I think maybe a local derby can be quite feisty in terms of the maybe early couple of minutes testing what they can get away with.
Yeah.
In terms of how do you or maybe controls broken down a wee bit. How do you use a rip? What are the strategies referees use in terms of maintaining that? Like, what's the psyche there and trying to maintain that authority? Like, if a player's in your face shouting at them, how do you deal with that? What's...
It's just confidence, Jason. Yeah. It's just confidence. And sometimes I might not actually have that confidence, but it's just how I portray myself to make it look like I'm confident. There's times I'm making decisions where I'm not completely sure, but I have to sell myself.
Yeah.
And sometimes that works because people are looking at you and saying, "Oh, he must know this. You know, he looks pretty confident." And that's what it is. So yeah, that's the big thing. You do gain more respect over time. I think as you gain experience, as people become aware of you, people know what to expect from your decision making. And it can be quite hard because I think sometimes people will make opinions on you before you even start refereeing. So, you know, I had the age thing whenever I was refereeing quite young. People were thinking, "Oh, he's only 14, he's 15, you know, what does he know? What does he know? He hasn't played the game. He doesn't know anything about football." You have an element of appearance too. You know, what do people think about you as a referee based on your appearance? It shouldn't be like this, but this is what it is. What height is he? How does he look? Can we intimidate him? It's all part of the psychology of what people think they can get away with in terms of a referee, and also the familiarity as well. So I'm going to get it easier refereeing in the league I referee in now than someone that's doing their first or second game because they've seen me before. They have that element of trust. Whereas somebody else coming in, they don't know what they're like as a person, they don't know what they're like as a referee, and they're going to test them. You know,
I think it's one of the things when I worked in the area of performance and behavioural analysis. Some of the things I would have looked at behaviours of the referees, and you'd have been looking at that, and it was more to, I suppose, not to be deviant about it, but more to react to the way that referee referees the game. So if we looking at their interpretation of rules and laws, and the quicker you can adapt and change to the way you play. So you see this in rugby, football, no matter what, that it's such a frustrating thing that I'll be watching the game and you'll be saying, now that referee's made 3 decisions and they've been consistent. They don't align with the way each team interpretation of what that law is, but he's consistently given adapt. And that's one of the things I find frustrating. So I always talk about, look, understand the referee before you go on. If he starts to apply the laws slightly different to what's in your head, you need to change the way you're playing. Don't expect him to change the way he's refereeing because it's not going to happen in that moment. Is that something that like you would advocate, that it's more about that? It's not that, I suppose what I'm trying to get at is that, well, there's a standardized approach to refereeing. There are going to be variations in the way a particular rule or law, what we as fans might say, well, that would have been a free kick outside the box. Why is it not a penalty in the box? like that nuance between the rules and laws between each individual referee. I suppose that's something, isn't it, that teams have to deal with, and they have to learn to work with the referee and play the referee.
Yeah, it works both ways. So you're going to have many different referees, personalities, the way they apply the laws. Equally, you're going to have, we as referees have so many different players, personalities, how they react to different referees. So as you say, it's up to them to adapt. I think what people cry out for most of all in our sport is consistency. So yes, two rights don't make or two wrongs don't make a right, but I think people can accept mistakes as long as it's consistent, as in both teams are getting the same level of decisions. People can accept that. It's fine. But it's inconsistency that really frustrates people, and that's what we find a challenge.
Yeah, because it's very, I think without a doubt, we've established even today and prior to this podcast that it's definitely, referees are held to a different standard to players, because players make multiple mistakes during a game, multiple mistakes. And we don't highlight that as often as we do the mistakes that a ref, like you say, you make one mistake and you're really held to account. Because I think one of my things that I advocate is, being involved in sport, was if you feel at the end of the game that a referee's decision has decided the outcome, you haven't done enough. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that we need to get into the psyche of everybody in terms of refereeing. So thinking about, I suppose, where you are at the moment in terms of your refereeing and your business, what are you hoping, what's the future hold for sort of moving forward in terms of your refereeing? Are the introduction, maybe technology is a big thing at the moment. How is technology maybe going to help you in your refereeing? Do you see that being a big help? And the same then for the business as well?
Yeah, so starting refereeing, we recently had VAR training in England. So I think it's a while off coming in here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions around the finances and the personnel to actually run it here. So we receive VAR training in England, and that is mainly for our international referees, which I am one of, to operate in games within UEFA and FIFA that have VAR. So that's going to be quite helpful for us to get more appointments that have VAR as well. So in terms of my ambition, a lot of it's outside my control. And yes, I can perform and I can put in, I can have good games and all the rest, but I just need to keep doing that. I know it's cliche, Football managers use the same thing, saying we just focus on the next game, but that is literally it, because I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. It's obviously worked so far, and other people will decide what my next games are. I'd like to go as far as I can. I appreciate I'm from Northern Ireland, and it's more challenging because the games I referee on a weekly basis aren't as high level as perhaps other countries. So yeah, I've big ambitions, but I'm also realistic, and I don't like using that word too often because I think it limits perhaps your goals. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully I can get better games in UEFA next season and beyond that, and yeah, see what happens. So in terms of business, I really want to grow my current business, and in terms of Touchline, which I run as well, which is more the technology within refereeing, I want to grow that and become a leader of sports official technology. So look at really what else can be introduced to not only football referees but sports officials in general. What technology can be brought in to assist them in decision making, because I touched on the point there previously about how inaccurate decisions cost teams money, and more teams are acting like businesses now. So it's more important than ever that we try and improve the accuracy of decision making within sport in general. So I want to look and develop more products that will assist that, and ultimately, be implemented into the sport in the future.
It's very interesting from the technology point of view. I always look at, as new technology comes on, and like we're sitting at the moment in I suppose the biggest digital transformation we've ever witnessed with the uptake of artificial intelligence, things like ChatGPT, such a low I suppose, entry level to being able to use it. It's free to start with. It's those sorts of things that unheard of in terms of getting access to digital technology. I think as businesses and as people, previous years, the barriers to accessing technology has either been cost or you know what I mean, the skills needed to apply it. Now we're looking at something that has been put out there that can be, I suppose, deployed at scale very, very quickly by people that just understand natural language, which is, I think it's amazing. But thinking obviously in terms of the refereeing side of things, I look back then at generational, I suppose, introductions of technology. Like we looked at virtual reality, came out and it was going to be the next big thing. And then all of a sudden it seemed to go on quiet. And I'm going like, have we missed a trick there with virtual reality? Because thinking about the decision-making headsets, being able to play out scenarios in a room for decision-making, do you see that as something that could maybe reintroduced into, I know there's been people sort of prodding and playing with it, doesn't it? But it's never really took a massive foothold.
Yeah, there's actually a company in Belfast that, I think they're in Belfast, that use virtual reality for goalkeeper training.
Yeah, I've seen, I can't remember that was, I saw it down at the IFA once being demonstrated.
Yeah, so I spoke to one of the people in there about potentially using it for refereeing. And they said one of the challenges is getting the situations to use under the virtual reality. So I think it would be a great idea, because whenever we do our initial referee courses for new referees, it's all clips of other games. It's all text, laws of the game. But how good would it be if we have a new potential referee putting the headset on and having to work out the decision on their own, not knowing what's going to come up.
Themselves in the game.
It's the best way to train.
Yeah,
it's going to be the best way to train. So, yeah, I don't know. You're right in what you say. It was the next big thing, and now it's all AI. It's all, which is AI. But the speed at which AI has been implemented into everyone's daily lives is incredible. You think if you go back to probably the internet,
yeah,
that took a while to really pick up and for it to become mainstream. Look at how quick things become mainstream now. It's incredible how the difference.
Artificial talent is going to become the norm, and we're not going to hide from that. But I think the problem that we have in society at the moment is not enough people understand the dangers and limitations of artificial intelligence.
Correct.
We can go on the internet today and find every benefit there is. Just go on TikTok now, go on, and there'll be people showing you all these amazing things it does. There's nobody talking about the biases within it. There's nobody really telling us about the dangers of AI. You know what I mean? The fact that maybe in 6 months' time, somebody can make a phone call to me with my daughter's face, with her voice, not on a phone call, but actually on a video call, making a cry for help, and it's not actually her. It's her voice, it's her face on a video call. That is a real danger that we're facing at the moment. I think that's a big thing,
and that's a possibility. People think 100%. That's a way a long time off, but it's a real possibility.
We're not far from it.
And how, just before you go on to your next point, how do you think then educational institutions will overcome this problem of AI in assessments?
Dynamic assessment. We have to. So typically, prior to artificial intelligence, myself and every other, I'll say you'll nod your head in a minute. Don't have enough time. I'm an educator. I don't have time for marketing. I'm marketing all the time. I'm doing all this admin. That's all you would have got out of us. We complained about the administrative burden on somebody that's trying to deliver education. I can tell you now, depending on what my week looks like, but there are weeks I can save 20 hours. And I'll stand here and I could show you that, how I can save 20 hours off my workload by using artificial intelligence to do a lot of the administrative burden that I was tasked with. So I've bought myself 20 hours there. So the easiest thing is take them 20 hours, go and grab a cup of tea and think I can do nothing. Somebody's paying the bill.
Yeah.
So my job is now to say, well, if I'm using it, it's unacceptable to think that my students can't use it. So how do then I make sure that they use it responsibly? So a lot of that is about what you talk about, sport, setting standards, first of all. So let them know what I expect as a standard. So I talk about, I have this bell curve of what's acceptable, and that could be different based on task, assignment, age group, because the standards would be slightly different. But I have a framework that I've built that allows me to apply AI. And then what I'm thinking is, like, if I get a piece of work and I've switched from, unless I'm assessing their ability to construct English grammar or literacy, I'm assessing your knowledge of how to apply a digital transformation into a company. If you produce an essay for me and I go, that looks a bit suspicious that it's been written by AI. Now, I can't prove that. So my job here in this stage is sit you down and say, right, let's then have a look at this dynamically. So I'm going to ask you to defend that work. So I'm going to ask you questions about your essay. If you can ping me the answers, do I really care that ChatGPT wrote it? Because you have the depth of knowledge, because you actually went and learned it. It just wrote it up. It summarized it better than what you could.
Yeah.
But you actually learnt everything that's in that paper, and you have the depth of knowledge to back up what's on that paper. Now, if you come to me with that paper and you can't answer a single question, we're in a different scenario. That then you have done no learning, because my job as an educator is to encourage you to learn. So I have to make a dynamic decision now, right? Have you learnt the content that I delivered? And if you have, then I am happy. If you haven't learned it, then we deal with that in a different way. So I think their decisions, as educators, we're going to have to deal with this, and that we're going to have to come up with strategies like that. And I think then it's looking at it in a wider world of how do we look at that in a business world as well, because that is what's going to happen. You know, I'm getting emails from people that ChatGPT writes. If you see a spaceship and you'll see the wee rocket. If you see the wee rocket on social media, I would 95% guarantee you ChatGPT wrote it. It's a default emoji.
That's the thing. Even LinkedIn posts, you don't know. You don't know
what's real anymore.
Your question is, has the person behind this account actually wrote this?
Yeah. So I talk about the augmentation of you. So use it to get you to the start line quicker, and then augment. So use ChatGPT. I use it for LinkedIn posts, but it gets me to the start line. Give it some scenarios, tell it what I'm doing, gets me some content, and then I work it.
Yeah.
So it's about augmenting me, not replacing me.
Yeah.
Because if I wanted to replace me, I'm losing my job.
I remember seeing a post where someone had posted something on LinkedIn, and there were about 10 comments, and about 8 of them had the exact same comment, because they've obviously asked for a response to this post, and it's produced the same comment, which is absolutely ridiculous that we've got to this point where 10 comments, 9 of the same, exact same comment.
Yeah. Obviously, thinking of everything we've looked at there, one thing that I do with all my sort of podcasts, we feed all your information into ChatGPT. So now that we're on, now we're on the topic of AI, and it generates a question. So this was something that we spoke about at the start, and we said, well, let's have it's a thing of the world at the moment. Let's have a bit of fun with this and see how good the questions are. Some of the questions have been quite interesting. So I'm going to read this out verbatim as ChatGPT writes it out.
This will be good.
So so the question from Chad is, throughout your varied career, you've seen the impact of decisions made both on the field and in the boardroom. In your view, what tips would you give to someone on making decisions under pressure, whether it's in the heat of a game or while steering a company to success?
Wow.
Very thoughtful, isn't it?
Really hit me there, Chat. I guess it's taking your time to understand everything that's going on and getting as much information as possible and taking clues from what's there. So, you know, we talk in refereeing about whenever you do have key match decisions, there's certain things that go on that as you gain experience, you start to pick up on. Perfect example is if there's a really bad tackle goes in, the natural instinct is for the opposing team is to run to the player that made the tackle as opposed to run to me, because they're more upset with the player that's made the tackle than trying to get me to give a red card, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They run to me whenever they know it might not be a red card, but they're trying their best to get the opposing player red carded. So that's a clue. We there's so many things in refereeing that we know if you add all these things together, that more than likely it's going to be this thing. So it's the exact same thing probably in business, whereby you're trying to come up with the best decision, like we talked about earlier, for the situation, and taking every piece of information that you can from all angles, and using that to come up with the best decision. I don't know if that was a good answer.
Yeah, no, it is. It's
sort of
very, because I keep thinking about those snap decisions in sport compared to business, because I know obviously the decision making process of a business, and we do a lot of government contracts and stuff like that, and you think of that as well. You know that becomes elongated further then, because there's so many tiers and layers of government trying to get decisions made and things. So you just think of, right, like that's such a big process, and the decisions being made, as we've already discussed, in a football match are so instantaneous. But like you say, it's about consistency and getting that in. But do you also find then in that situation that repetitiveness in terms of the training and the thought that we get better at things by practice?
Of course.
And obviously that's what stands to you. You know you've made that decision. It's one you would have made from a training video, but it's also you've been making it consistently over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and that's what helps.
Yeah, as time goes on and you referee more matches, you've seen more situations. The number of situations that you haven't seen decrease over time.
Yeah.
So naturally, something will happen that you've dealt with in the past, and you know how to deal with that, or maybe you didn't deal with it right, but you were told that it should have been this. So you learn from your mistakes, you learn from your experiences, and that's how you become better at anything, really, isn't it? It's not just in the football pitch.
So to finish today, we have what we call the finisher. And again, it's the same question for everybody to finish our podcast. So thinking about the local business landscape, if you could be dropped up at Stormont tomorrow and you had some sort of power to have an impact on the budget, so you could divert some funds or something in the local economy, whether that be business or sport-wise, what would it be and why?
Easy one to answer for me. More investment in young entrepreneurs, because I think that not only Belfast, but Northern Ireland in general is full of talent, and not necessarily people that have an interest in starting their own business, but if they get a push, if they have an incentive to do so, which I think sometimes people struggle with, financial support, support from other business people. I think we have such a hotbed of talent here. You look at the tech scene here and the software development scene. If we really went for it like other countries do, I think the potential is unbelievable.
I think I said to you before this come on, the whole idea of this podcast.
Yeah.
I moved here just over 30 years ago, and I've worked for some amazing people. I've worked with some amazing people, and I have colleagues and friends and network with some amazing people. And I kept feeling that we talk about the influx of investment. We don't talk about what we already have in our economy. You know what I mean? And I don't want to disparage, obviously, an influx of any investment, because that's amazing that these big companies see us as a viable area to come and invest in.
But why are they doing this?
Yeah, because of the talent.
Because of the talent.
We're still not shouting loud enough about this talent
that
we have in Northern Ireland. Local businessmen that are doing amazing things, local businesswomen that are doing amazing things. And I know that talent exists here, so that's the whole idea of the podcast, is to actually sing and dance about people like yourself. So I'm absolutely delighted you come in today. I love the story. I love the combination of the story in terms of the referee and trying to get that bit of psyche. And I think I'd maybe, with your permission, what I'd like to do one day, we have some ideas for this, but I'd love to maybe, don't know where we'd have to get a permission from the IFA or something, but come out with you one day and do a podcast at a game.
Yeah,
so a day in the life for the game and a day in the life of a referee. I'd love to do that if that's something we can do.
It'd be great to do, because it's something I actually thought about not so long ago, because it would be really good for recruitment as well. I think for referees.
To see what you're about. You are listening to the Pecha Kucha podcast.